Hey everybody, Mark here. Today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship and starting a small business. You'll find out how important both of these are to the Canadian economy. With that, let's get going. So, we'll look at some of the reasons why people want to become entrepreneurs. Maybe some of you do. And I didn't, to be honest. I was what I referred to as a reluctant entrepreneur, but it had so many positive benefits to my career and my life. I did not want to be one. I wound up being one by accident. I learned so much. One of the companies I was at for 4 years, I say I got 10 years worth of business experience in 4 years. We'll talk about the importance of small business to the Canadian economy. We'll look at how small businesses operate and some of the aspects it takes to start and run a small business. And you guys are experiencing some of that now, starting your drink businesses in the CEO game. And we'll look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of small businesses heading into the global market. We just came off the global market section. So, entrepreneurship. It is accepting the challenge of starting and running a business. An entrepreneur is somebody who risks their time and money in order to create a business in hopes of growing their wealth. Small business and entrepreneurship different in a couple ways. One is the amount of wealth creation. Okay, small business doesn't necessarily have to grow big. It can remain small, but many entrepreneurial ventures have that goal of becoming what's referred to as a unicorn in the industry. It has the goal of becoming a billion-dollar company. Okay, many small businesses will never become a billion-dollar company, but many entrepreneurship businesses have that potential opportunity. The other is the speed of wealth creation. Well, certainly you can go from zero to $1 billion in a few years pretty fast. You can go zero to millions of dollars pretty fast in entrepreneurship. Small businesses tend to take longer. They tend to be more conservative. The risks tend to be less than a lot of entrepreneurial businesses. But that doesn't mean they aren't worthwhile. There are many, many types of small businesses that are well worth doing and very enjoyable and can create a large amount of wealth for you as well. Risk is another aspect. Entrepreneurial businesses can be very risky, whereas small businesses can tend towards the more conservative side. And that's also linked to innovation in many ways. Innovation, when we think about entrepreneurial businesses, we tend to think about innovation in a lot of ways. But that's not necessarily the only type of businesses as entrepreneurial, right? But I grew up in technology. My career's always been in technology. I got involved in 1977 with technology and have been involved one way or another ever since. So when I think entrepreneurship, I instantly think tech. Okay? Many of you may be in the same boat. Many of you know the story about Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg or the guys from Google or Elon Musk, right? Creating wealth out of innovation and ideas. It's very exciting, but it's also very, very risky. So, why do some people take on the challenge of being an entrepreneur? Well, it's exciting to work on new ideas. If something's new, if something's unknown, if you're solving a problem in a different way, that's really exciting, that creation. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a product. It could be an improvement in process as well. And certainly process plays a huge impact in our world, particularly in things like supply chain that we'll get to later. Becoming an entrepreneur gives you a certain level of independence. You get to set your own hours. Unfortunately, for most entrepreneurs, especially at the start, those hours are super long. You don't get to leave at 5 o'clock. You work till whenever the job's done. When my children were young and I was starting one of my companies, I set my boundaries. I would leave work by 6 p.m. every night. Guaranteed. 6 o'clock, I'm in the car driving home. I would have dinner with my family every night. And I would get to play with my kids. I'd get to make dinner some days. I get to put my kids to bed. Then eventually my wife would fall asleep. And once everybody was asleep, then I would pull out my laptop and do more work. So I would be with my family from 6 o'clock through 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock sometimes. Pretty much everybody was asleep by 10. And then I'd work till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd get up at 6 or 6:30, try and get a little work in before people started to wake up. I would be with my family for breakfast. I'd take my kids to school. Then I'd go to work and start the whole thing over again. Okay? I worked a lot of Saturdays. I worked a lot of Sundays. I always tried to carve out my work time when it wasn't family time. I did not want my children growing up saying, "Where's Daddy?" And that has shown in the relationship I have with them. It's hard to do. One of the things that I got asked by a student once when I told that story is, well, wait a second, you were running a company that had tens of millions of dollars worth of investment, and you would turn your cell phone off at 6 o'clock when you left the office? And I'm like, yep. And they're like, what would happen if the building burned down? I said, well, if the building was on fire, somebody would eventually call me. And I would answer the phone, and the conversation would go like this. "Hey, Mark, the building's on fire." My first question would be, have you called 911? Are the firemen there already? If not, why are you calling me first? Okay, and enough people in the executive team had my home phone number that if they really needed to get in touch with me between 6 and 10 p.m., they could. So turning my cell phone off gave me that freedom to be with my family without constantly going back to it. The challenge, that's another reason people become entrepreneurs. The challenge is awesome. I like challenges. I like being pushed. I like to expand my abilities. And one way to do that is through challenges. Many of you have taken up the 30-day challenge for a few extra bonus points. That's awesome, right? It will be a learning process for you. It may be something you decide to continue to do. That's awesome. But when we succeed at a challenge, even when we fail at a challenge, we come out of it with more knowledge, with more understanding of ourselves, which is great. Why else? Family pattern. Guess what? As an entrepreneur, you don't have to work those 60, 80, 90-hour weeks. You can actually start a business and cut your amount of work time back if you do it properly. Right? I'm sure if you haven't read it, you've heard of the book, The 4-Hour Work Week. Right? Profit's another one. It can be a way to dramatically increase your wealth in a relatively short period of time. That may be another driver for some people. And another reason is immigrants. Very often when people come to a new country, their opportunities are limited. They might not be able to find the kind of job that they had in their other country. One reason is credentials aren't considered equal across countries. I had somebody who worked for me around the house, and they were happy to work for me around the house, and they were getting paid X dollars an hour, was more than they made in their home country, and they had a PhD, and they couldn't find a job in Canada in their field because their PhD wasn't recognized. And they were actually making more money doing things around my house than they were in their home country with a PhD. Okay? So very often, immigrants will come into a new country and not have the same type of opportunity or the same type of availability of the job they might have had before. And so you see immigrants very often starting new businesses. So, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? Certainly self-directed. Okay? You need to drive yourself because nobody else is going to do it. Okay? That is one of the advantages of taking that discipline challenge. the 30-day challenge that we're doing in class, is it helps you line up things so you can be more self-directed, so you can be on top of things. Okay, because if you're not going to do it, nobody else is. Okay, this is your business. You need to take responsibility for it. In the same vein, when I say you need to take responsibility for your own learning, you need to take responsibility for your own business. You need to be self-nurturing. You need to look after yourself through the process. You need to rely on yourself more than anybody else. You definitely need to be action-oriented. There are so many things that are going to happen when you start your business. There are so many decisions you're going to have to make. Some of you are finding that now with the CEO game. You know, I mean, how many decisions do you really have to make to run a drink company? Wow, a lot. And guess what? No different in the real world. I think I might have mentioned before, I have an MBA. I worked for some pretty big companies in different industries before I started my first company. Guess what? I was blown away by the number of decisions and the type of decisions I had to make. It blew me away. I had to make decisions about stuff I didn't really know much about. And they needed to be made because if they weren't made, things wouldn't happen. Were all my decisions good decisions? Heck no. But when I found out it was a bad decision, I tried to fix it as soon as possible and turn it in the right direction. Highly energetic, that is helpful. If you're working 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20-hour days, yeah, you need energy. And you can't be relying on Rockstar and Red Bull. Use those for short periods of time, but don't make it your daily way to get energy. Okay? Tolerance of uncertainty. This is a huge one. This is, in my opinion, one of the things that holds back people from making decisions. Okay? And I don't think our education system is doing a lot of favors for people here. I've seen a trend over the last few years of students coming through my classes, and that they are super afraid to make a choice for fear of being wrong. They always want more information or an example. Guess what? You're going to be doing stuff where there are no examples. You're going to have to make decisions because there's a timeline to make the decision, and you will never have perfect information. Are you going to be wrong sometimes? Yes, I'll tell you now. Are you going to be right sometimes? Yes. Are you going to be right most of the time? I certainly hope so. All right. Another thing you need to be able to do is learn quickly. And along with that, that means absorb a lot of information. Okay. The one company that I raised tens upon tens of millions of dollars for, I literally knew nothing about the technology. It's like, how did Mark start a company and raise millions of dollars knowing nothing about the technology? Guess what? I didn't need to at the start. At the end, I could sit down with any executive or any engineer who worked in that field and ask them intelligent questions, because I made myself learn it quickly. If you're working in a tech company and you don't have the ability to understand the technology, not necessarily a good thing or a helpful thing. Okay? I had the respect of my engineers. As a finance guy, I was the chief financial officer for most of my time in that company. The engineers respected me, and not something I think many of them ever would have said about their CFOs before. Many of them probably never even met their CFO from other companies before, right? I was part of that company, and they all knew it. They all knew what I did for the company, and I knew what they did. And I could ask them the right types of questions eventually. Okay? It's important to be able to learn quickly. So, how do we take what we're passionate about or what's a problem and turn it into an opportunity? Many of you may believe that you should follow your passion. And if you believe that, great. And if you don't, that's okay too. Okay? Here's one of the difficulties that I have with people who are all about, oh, you got to follow your passion and lead a fulfilling life in your job. It's like, well, if you turn your passion into a career, into a job, that's what it becomes, a job. Okay? And very often that will suck the passion right out of it. I remember I had a friend who was a full-time professional photographer. And when he went on vacation, he didn't take a camera with him because the last thing he wanted to do was take a picture. You ask him why he went into photography? It was because it was his passion. You ask him 25 years into his career as a very good professional photographer, is it still your passion? No. It's his life. It's his career. Okay? So that's the other side of that passion coin. But here's the thing. If you have a desire to solve problems or look at problems and see the opportunity, it doesn't really matter what you do. You can find fulfillment in your career and keep your passion maybe as a sideline. Okay? One of my favorite quotes is from Einstein. In the midst of difficulty lies opportunity. Love that quote. Okay? It took me the longest time in my career to realize that I was the weird one from a work perspective. Now, what I mean by that is that I love chaos. I love when things are completely out of whack. I can go into a situation. I can analyze the situation. I can slice and dice the problems. I can solve them all. I can implement the program, get everything back on track, hand it back to you on a silver platter with everything working well, and then I get bored out of my mind. And I realized I was the weird one. I couldn't understand why other people didn't like this. Most people like consistency. They like to go in and do their job and the same thing. They don't like surprises. Okay? So, what else? Do you have the skills and resources to start a business? Let's start with the skills. Well, you're here studying to improve your skills. Good thing. That will help. Many of the skills you're going to learn fall into several categories. One is what I call toolbox skills. And those are all the courses you take. So you'll take accounting and finance and HR and supply chain and economics. I refer to those as toolbox skills. So you'll learn how an HR department works. You'll learn what an employee manual is. You'll learn how to look at an employment contract and why we need them. You look at union relations, things like that. Those are skills. Those are tools that we can use. Okay? What other skills will you learn at university? One of the major skills you learn will be your ability to think. Okay? That's what we need. We need people who are able to take those toolbox skills and apply them in different ways that haven't been done before. That's the ability to use your brain and to use the tools you know to solve problems. Here's one for you. Social media coordinator. Social media manager. Okay? 15, 20 years ago, nobody had ever heard of that because it didn't exist. Now they're everywhere. Why? Well, all those people with marketing skills saw some new technology and said, hey, how do we use this to better our craft? How do we use this inside our companies? Well, I've got these marketing skills, and this is a new technology. What if I take my marketing skills and try and apply it over here? What happens? We get social media marketing. That's awesome. Here's the thing. What kind of jobs are going to be 15 years out from now that we can't even think about? Right? If we don't have the ability to think and adapt, that's going to be a problem. Here's another skill that you will develop over your time at university, your ability to communicate. Probably the most important skill you can develop for the advancement of your career. You can be the smartest person in the room, and if you can't convince anybody that your idea is the best idea, you're going to get frustrated. Okay, I had they have these events on campus. I think it's called Networking 411. So when campus opens up again, they'll probably have one of them. And I was sitting at a table, and it's kind of like speed dating. So they have people from industry sit at a table. I was there as an industry person, not as a prof. And students come around, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 at a time. And they get to ask you questions for 15 minutes. They ring a bell, then you get to go visit somebody else. And the room's filled with, 60, 80 different people. And so you can look up beforehand who's there, what industries they've worked in, and go see. So I go and I'm sitting there, and this computer science student comes in, and he comes in, and he like slouches in his chair like this. And first thing out of his mouth is, "They told me I needed to talk to you." I have no idea who they are. Apparently somebody said he should go talk to me. And I said, okay, fair enough. So I asked him a few questions, like, what are you studying? Computer science. And I said, what courses do you like? Yeah, it's like, what do you find challenging? He goes, well, really not much. It's not that difficult yet. I said, okay. I said, have you worked on any group projects? And I was like, yeah. I said, how'd they go? And he said, well, not really well. I said, why is that? He goes, well, they didn't like my ideas. I said, fair enough. I said, I'm gonna explain something to you, and you let me know if I'm right. So you went to the group meeting. You sat there, you didn't say much. You'd already solved the entire problem in your head. They talked about stuff that didn't make sense and wasn't going to work. You let them go on for a while. Finally, you couldn't take it anymore. You said, hey, this is how we need to do it. Boom, boom, boom. You laid it out. Let's do that. And they kind of looked at you. They looked at each other, and they're kind of like, yeah, you know what? We think our idea is kind of a better idea. Let's go with that. And you got frustrated. You didn't say anything else for the rest of the meeting. You went home that night. You did the entire project by yourself, probably staying up to 3 or 4 in the morning. The next day, you sent it to everybody and said, done. He changed his posture. He was now sitting up straight. He was leaning over, looking at me. He goes, yeah, that's kind of happened before. I said, yeah, I'm not surprised. I said, you're probably the best programmer in your year, right? He said, yeah. I said, here's the problem. You go through the rest of your career or the rest of your life like that, you're going to get a good job with a company, you're going to work on a team, you're going to work on projects, you're going to get voted down at the team meeting, you're going to have to work on whatever they tell you to work on, then you're going to go home, you're going to redo everything the proper way, and then you're going to come back the next day, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 3 months, with it done completely differently, but correct. And now you've just worked twice the number of hours and don't get any more pay. I said, I've hired hundreds of programmers in my career. I know good programmers. You need to learn how to communicate with people. Because if you can't convince other people that your idea is the best one, you are going to be frustrated literally for the rest of your life. At which point he said, okay, I think I get it now. How? And so I gave him some tips on where to go and how to do that. That ability to communicate is so important, whether it be in an email, a text, one-on-one, through Zoom, through a video, standing up in front of a group and giving a presentation. Super important. And in my opinion, it will have the biggest impact on your career, much more so than how smart you are or how skilled you are. Okay. So what else? Can you get your product to the market before the opportunity closes or a competitor beats you? Okay. That's tough, right? First mover advantage, we sometimes talk about, getting in the market first, getting your product out there first. That's tough. And that's part of what drives people to work long hours. And can you keep the business going? It's one thing to get it out there, but man, it doesn't end once you get your first sale. It's just getting going. Female entrepreneurs. So let's have just a little background here about SMEs. SMEs stand for small and medium-sized enterprises. So it's businesses with less than 500 employees. What we've seen over the last 20, 30 years is we have seen more women move into the entrepreneurial space. And there's been a number of drivers. One is financial need. Okay. Maybe they were separated from a partner. Maybe they took time off to have children and couldn't find a job in their previous field. Maybe they want, their children are getting a little older and don't want to work 40 hours a week. They want to work part-time but still have the need for more money. Lack of promotional opportunities. We talk about the glass ceiling, that women will very often go to a certain point in a company and can't get beyond there. You look at executives in companies, you look at boards of directors, they are still dominated by men. It's shifting slowly. We are seeing more and more women get to the higher levels, but it's been a very difficult, very long fight. Women returning to the workforce, I think I mentioned this a couple seconds ago, right? So you've taken some time off to have children and you want to get back to work, and there may not be opportunities for what you used to do before. So you start your own business. Family and personal responsibility. Being an entrepreneur can have much more flexible hours. So maybe you can get up while the kids are still asleep, work for an hour or two. Kids get up, get them dressed, get them off to school. 9:30 rolls around, you can work from 9:30 to 2, go get your children, work after. So it can help balance out your life while still contributing income. There is more public awareness of women in business and the difficulties that women have faced. Okay. I recently saw a video of Michelle Obama talking to some school children. And this one young child asked Michelle Obama if when she was her age, she thought she could grow up to be the First Lady of the United States. And Michelle Obama, wonderful speaker, gave a great answer. She was like, when I was your age, I honestly didn't think that was a possibility because nobody like me had ever done that before. Okay. So we have more awareness, we have more opportunities. Is it equal and fair? No, not yet. We still have a lot of work to do. Okay, but it is to do. Okay, but it is starting to get better in a lot of places. Part-time occupations, I think I've kind of covered that in different areas there. Yeah, we can adjust our hours a little bit. Here's another thing, another reason we need more women in entrepreneur land is they're better at it, okay? Statistics show that there's a higher rate of success for female entrepreneurs, okay? I honestly don't know if this is the reason, but there is a correlation as to how the difference between how boys and girls are raised. Boys are raised to take risks. Climb a tree, ride your bike over a jump. And girls are not raised to take the same risks. So there is a correlation between the higher success rate and lower risk-taking as a child. Okay, I've read a number of studies on that. Definitely think there needs to be more research into it. So, your team. Here's the thing. As smart as you are, as much as you know, you can't possibly know everything. Okay, so your team's a group of people from different backgrounds and skills that come together to create your management team, to create your new product or service. Okay, and we need a diverse group of skills. Okay, we need people who are creative. And that's not just in places like marketing or sales. We need creative people in engineering too. We need people, if we're making a product, we need people with supply chain and production experience. We definitely need marketing and selling. Okay? You can't be great at all of those things. So we need to fill the gaps in our personal knowledge and skills with people who can do those things better. Okay? And if we get the right team, it just makes it that much easier to get things done that much faster. So, micro enterprise. Again, back to some definitions. It's a small business with 4 or less employees. Okay, that's referred to as micro. And there's lots of micropreneurs. Okay. Very often they're started by 1 or 2 out of the 3 or 4. And they rope other people into their little business one way or another. So, home-based businesses, another way to be an entrepreneur and start a business. Okay, computer technology has given us the ability to create some amazing home-based businesses that can start out small and have the ability to scale. We can seem like we're a much bigger enterprise than we actually are. We've also seen a lot of layoffs and corporate downsizing, which are making people look at different ways of creating a living. We've also seen a shift in social attitude, right? Back in the 60s and 70s, it was all about working for the big company, working for the man. Big company, you have one employer. I have some friends who are only a little older than me who literally only ever worked for one company their entire career. Most of them retired at some point between 50 and 55 because they had pretty lucrative pension plans. Okay. Very few people younger than me, I have ran into very few people younger than me who work for the same company their whole life. I have one of my peers, he's 1 year younger than me. Not only has he worked for the same company his entire life, he actually hasn't changed his job in 30 years. He could have got promotions and things, but he decided that's where he wants to be. Okay. Social attitudes. No longer is it frowned upon to change jobs, to not work for the big man, to work from home. Okay. That's okay. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people who work for those big companies are jealous of the people who work from home. Right? What are some of the challenges? Well, one is getting customers, right? We always need customers. Okay. 2, managing time. There are so many things to do, especially if it's just you. How do we divide our time? Another reason, we do the time blocking exercise. Look at how you're going to plan your time. 3rd one, how do we keep family and work separate? When I work from home, I had an office. When I went into my office, I closed my door. My family knew I was working. If they needed something bad enough, they would knock on my door. And yes, I had to train them to knock on my door. Okay. It's tough. Very often people will bring their cell phone to the table. Some people believe that everything is urgent. I told you earlier, I turn my cell phone off at 6, turn it back on at 9 or 10. Guess what? There's very little that goes on in business that can't wait 3 or 4 hours. Now, like I said, if it was bad enough executives had my home phone number. They could contact me if they wanted to. Okay. Abiding by city ordinances. Okay, you're running a home-based business. Guess what? Tough to cook things in your home because it's not a commercial kitchen. Okay, that can be a problem. And lastly, managing risk. We, generally speaking, are not exposed when we work for a bigger company to a lot of the things that go on that involve risk, unless you specifically work in that department. So there's a lot of risk. If you're making food, what happens if you make somebody sick? Right? Do you have the right types of insurance? And things like that. So here are some home-based businesses that can be started part-time. Home renovation, pet products and services, dog grooming or dog walking, catering services. Again, pending what your local regulations, you may or may not be allowed to make food at home. Cleaning services, fall prevention products. That's going to be bigger and bigger. Why? Because the baby boomers are getting older. Huge population bubble between, right now it's about 54 and almost 70. Those people are getting older, going to fall down and break their hips. Wedding planning, a lot of wedding planners started out of their home and still work out of their home. E-commerce business, setting up drop shipping. I did drop shipping in the very early days. Don't do it anymore. The margins are so slim these days. It's doable, but much more difficult. In-home beauty services, cutting hair, that type of thing. Sewing and alteration, and business life coach services. Seeing a massive growth in business and life coaches. I'm personally seeing it amongst a large number of my female friends in the kind of 45 to 55 range. A lot of them are getting certified in some sort of life coach and starting those businesses from their home. Very often, again, as a side business, and when it gets big enough, a number of them have quit their jobs and taken it on full time. They're great people to have in your social feed because they're endlessly positive. So, as a web-based business, we can actually offer more than stuff in stores. Okay, because we can drop ship. We don't have to have stuff on display. So we can make more efficient use of whatever space we have if we're doing our own warehousing. We can sell through Amazon and have Amazon warehouse it and just pay a small bit to have Amazon warehouse our products. We can sell through Shopify or Etsy. Okay. Online spending is just continuing to grow and has taken off tremendously in COVID days. Everybody sitting at home, ordering stuff from Amazon. The Amazon truck goes up and down my street several times a day. And it doesn't always stop at my house, but it very often does. Affiliate marketing. Affiliate marketing is another way you can make money without actually having any products. So if you've ever, this is popular amongst information products, like, I don't know, how to bake keto cookies. Okay, so somebody came up with a cookbook on how to bake keto cookies. Well, if you have a list of people who happen to like keto eating, you can become an affiliate of the person who owns that cookbook, and you can sell their cookbook to your clientele, and you get a percentage of whatever they spend. And that percentage can be as low as 5 or 10% and up to 55%. So you literally can make more than the person who owns the intellectual property by bringing the customer in. And why do they do that? Well, they do that because you are going to bring in customers that they can't reach. So they are getting bonus sales. So yeah, they give half up to get extra sales. Why not? Okay. So it's one of the easiest and lowest cost ways to start a web-based business. Intrapreneurs. Okay, an intrapreneur are people who work as an entrepreneur inside of a corporation. Okay, I've done this a couple times, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun if the culture within the company is right. Okay, if they're open to having new things happen, and you've got the support of the right people. When I worked for Corel, which is a big software company, owns Corel Draw, WordPerfect, WinZip, a whole bunch of other products these days. I got a reputation with the CEO. I was so far removed from the CEO when I got there. I rapidly moved up, but I got a reputation with the CEO. I was told that the CEO had an open door policy. If the door was open, you could knock on his door and ask if you could have a couple minutes. Guess what? Very few people ever did that. Guess who did? Me. I'm also of the opinion that it is completely acceptable for somebody to say, this sucks, if, and only if, they follow up with a recommendation, right? Think about it. A lot of people are out there and say, this sucks, right? You ever been out at a club and some of your friends are like, oh man, this music sucks. Great. What are you going to do about it, right? Or, hey man, this music sucks. I heard of a new club about 2 blocks away. Why don't we check that out? Okay. So it's okay to say it sucks as long as you've got an idea to fix it. So guess what? I saw something that sucked. I went to the CEO, knocked on his door, said, hey, can I have a couple of minutes? And I was like, yeah, sure, come on in. Told him who I was. He goes, great, sit down. He goes, what do you want to talk about? I said, well, I've noticed this. I didn't actually use the word sucks. It's like, I've noticed this. And I was like, yeah. I said, well, I've got a potential solution. Here's what I'd do. And he sat there and he listened. And it had nothing to do with my job. And at the end of it, he was like, okay, Mark, why don't you go look into that for me? Go talk to so-and-so and so-and-so. And then when you figure it out, come back and close the loop with me. And I walked out of his office like, wow, why don't more people do this? So guess what? I went, I spoke to so-and-so, went back, said, hey, you told me to follow up on this idea and come back to follow up? He goes, great, come on in, sit down. He goes, what happened? I said, well, my idea they already tried and it didn't work for these reasons. He's like, oh, okay, well, good try. I said, yes, but in the meantime, after talking to a few more people, here's another way I think I might be able to solve this. Is it okay if I go back to those first 2 people and see if we can work something out? He's like, yeah, go ahead. Went back, talked to the first 2 people, solved the problem. Guess what? I started to do this over and over again. Guess what? I didn't have to go to the CEO anymore. When he had problems he thought I could solve, it usually involved a voicemail from somebody else, right? And he would send me a voicemail and all it would be is, Mark, it's Mike, look into this, click. And the voicemail would be attached. So I'd go look into it, I'd come back and I'd say, it's good, it's bad, whatever. But if I ever said it's bad, I always had to give him reasons why and potential alternatives. Did he pick up on everything I wanted to do? Heck no. But I always closed the loop, I always went back, and I always had ideas. Okay, so I got to do all kinds of cool stuff in that company. Just because in his mind, I had a reputation of solving problems. And I stepped so far outside my chain of command. So I had a lot of fun there. So, entrepreneurs, people working inside a firm to do things. It's fun. It's exciting. It breaks up your daily monotony. right? I told you earlier, I like chaos. Well, guess what? I was creating my own to a certain degree, right? So, what else? Business incubators. Business incubators are places we can go and start our business. They usually have some sort of support services. One is they usually have some sort of subsidized rent, so you don't have to pay as much as you would. You can very often rent a room or an office or a couple offices. They very often have like internet infrastructure that you can get a part of. They very often have an entrepreneur in residence as somebody who's been there, done that before. They very often have staff who know how to help you put your pitch together, who know how to help you search for funding. Okay, so there's all kinds of incubators. One of the most famous is one called Y Incubator in California. Okay, we have an incubator here in Kamloops. We actually have an incubator on campus. Okay, so incubators are out there and they are neat places. There's usually a lot of energy involved. What's the goal of them? Well, the goal is to produce successful companies and help create jobs. Another goal, particularly of regional incubators like the ones in Kamloops or the ones in Kelowna, is to create the jobs in the community. We want successful businesses in our own community, right? So it will help build an industry or a group of companies inside the community. It can also help in diversification. A lot of companies around incubators are tech-based. Well, guess what? A lot of places don't have a lot of tech. Kamloops traditionally has not had a lot of tech. In the last 10 years, since I've moved here, there's a lot more, but there's still a lot of potential. Okay, so business incubators can be very helpful places. Okay, so small business. Okay, in order to be classified as a small business under the Government of Canada, you must have minimum sales of $30,000, have at least one paid employee, be incorporated into a company, and have filed income tax returns at least once in the last 3 years. A small business, is independently owned and operated. It is far from dominant in its field and must meet the size requirements for employees and revenues. Okay. One of the advantages of small businesses is that they can deliver on customer service very often much better than larger organizations. Okay. That's a key factor. Small businesses can differentiate on customer service. Okay, there's a big trend for people to buy local. Okay, I will buy local and I will pay a premium for that. Why? Because if the money's staying in my town, then that has a whole lot of spin-off effects. It's called the dollar cost multiplier. If I spend $10 on something in Kamloops, part of that goes to whatever I spent it on, part of it goes to the owner in profit, part of it goes to the employee who served me. Well, guess what? The owner is going to use part of that, what he makes from me, to buy groceries or to pay his mortgage or to invest back into the business. The employee is going to use part of theirs to do the same thing. So for every dollar I spend in Kamloops, that dollar gets recycled. That's called the dollar cost multiplier. For every $10 I spend on Amazon, how much of that is actually staying in Kamloops? Just a little bit, because the delivery guy gets paid, but that's it. Okay. So I'm willing to pay a premium for that. My premium is at most 15%. 10% or less, it's a no-brainer. I will pay 10% more for an item that I can buy in Kamloops as opposed to getting it elsewhere. Certain things up to 15%, but over 15%, I'll usually buy it elsewhere. Okay, that's me. Other people will always buy local. Other people will solely buy based on price. So let's look at how many people work in what kinds of firms here. Okay, move my head out of the way. So small businesses employ less than 100 people. 98% of businesses in Canada employ less than 100 people. Okay, that is 98% of the businesses, and they employ 1.1 million people. Or sorry, that's 1.1 million businesses, not people. Okay, 100 to 500 employees, that is 21,000 businesses. That doesn't seem like a lot. 21,000 employ 100 to 499 people. And lastly, 500 plus employees, 2,900 companies. Okay, so out of 1.17 million businesses, 97% employ less than 100 people. Okay, I would have thought there would have been more larger businesses, but they're not. And look at the breakdown here by manufacturing, goods producing versus services. Okay, Canada is very heavily service oriented. Let's see, I think I covered that one. Small businesses created over 1.1 million jobs in that 10-year period. Okay, so those, how many? 1.1 million companies employ 8 million people. Okay, so on average, let's do the math. On average, there is 8 people per company in this category. Okay, give or take. Okay, Canada's small businesses contributed 30% to the GDP, and small, medium-sized enterprises, so that's these two groups together, exported $106 billion worth of goods. Small and medium-sized businesses are huge in terms of the economy in Canada. About 16% of small businesses are owned by females. 20% are owned by men and women in equal partnerships. So what's that, 36? So that leaves 64% of businesses are owned by men alone. Okay, again, not equal. So why do businesses fail? Okay, businesses fail. I will give you the reason. I will give you the main reason. The reason, according to Mark, businesses fail because they don't have enough cash. It is my opinion that no business school on the planet does enough training of their business students. No undergrad business program, no MBA program does enough training about cash management, period. Not Harvard, not Stanford, not HEC, not any famous business school you've ever heard of does enough to teach our students about the importance of cash. A lot of my consulting deals with cash flow, and it is so important. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds or so, go through this list and count how many of these you think will affect your cash flow. Okay, I'm just going to sit here. 30 seconds. $15 seconds. Give you a little more exciting background to look at. Okay, so how many will affect cash flow? These were the ones I put up, but virtually all of them will affect your cash flow. Okay, businesses go out of business because they don't have enough cash. You can show a profit on your financial statements every month and literally not have enough cash to make payroll. Okay. I never missed a payroll. Touch wood. I once had to sell a whole bunch of product at an 85 or 90% discount for something they weren't going to get for 6 to 8 months if they paid me this week. I went to one of my customers and said, look, you want this, we know you want this, we've given you the pricing schedule for it. I will charge you X amount of dollars if you pay by this week, and it will be delivered 6 or 8 months from now. And they paid me. And what did I do? I put it in the bank and made payroll. The next week, some of the other things came in. I was able to make payroll and continue to make payroll. Important thing for me to make payroll. Why? Because if you miss payroll even once, your employees are going to start looking for work. A lot of employees, even ones with $100,000 a year jobs or $150,000 a year jobs, are living paycheck to paycheck. You miss one payroll, you risk losing employees and your employees losing confidence in your company. Let's get back to the library here. Okay.